Hey, welcome to Collective Soulversations, a podcast dedicated to exploring healing, health, and hope through inspiring stories and empowering discussions on spiritual wellness. In every episode, you can expect engaging conversations, inspiring stories, and practical advice. Become part of the journey towards healing and hope. Subscribe to our podcast and follow us on social media for updates and community engagement. Share your stories and receive support on your wellness journey with Jodi and Leah. Together, let's heal, grow, and thrive. Welcome to Collective Soulversations.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Collective Soulversations. I'm Jodi, and we have Leah in the house, of course, and we have a special guest today. We have Emanuel Zevallos with us, and again, we'll hear the welcome, Emanuel. So I'm just going to, because I know that we are going to be unpacking so much and talking about so many things with Emanuel. I'm just going to give you like the Reader's Digest blurb of what he does, because it's not who he is, because he's really so much, and we want to get in and explore that a bit. But so Emanuel helps people with depression, anxiety. He uses energy medicine and several different forms of energy medicine. We'll get into that. He also does regression hypnotherapy. And this is something that's kind of new that he's doing. And so I'm sure he's super excited about that. And then Emmanuel also has something very unique about him because he does group healing. And there's something very unique about that. And I'll get him to talk to us about it because I haven't met anybody else that does kind of what he does. And so, yeah, welcome, Emmanuel. Welcome. And just maybe start off by telling us a little bit about yourself and then we'll dive in.
Sure. First of all, thank you guys, Jodi and Leah, to have me here. I'm very, very grateful for you guys and what you guys do to add value to your association. So thank you guys for being a great light out there. And yeah, so a little bit about me. I live out here in St. George with a beautiful blended family. My wife and I, Jess, we work together in our practice, our wellness practice called Compass Healing Center. And so, yeah, I've been doing this for about 10 years now. So I'm reaching my 10-year anniversary, so I don't know if I
Wow.
should celebrate by myself or with other people. I don't know.
That's a big
But
one.
it's a big one, yeah. And but the thing is that they say that if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. And
Yeah.
so I feel like since the 2015, I've just really have felt time kind of become irrelevant.
Wow.
I've learned to just help as many people as I can. When you find something beautiful and you find gold, it's like you can't really contain it yourself. Your goal is to just go out there and just tell people about it. So been doing that for a while, and I'm just grateful to be here. But I'm open. I'm an open book. So if you want to ask any questions,
That's
I'm here.
awesome.
I'm here for it.
That's awesome. So why don't we start off with, because and I know Leah's got lots of questions for
Mhm.
you. I always like to know though, like when it started for you. And here's the thing is I think like there are like two different kind of people in this industry, in this community. I feel like there are the people that who have just like, one day decided, oh, well, you know what? My car sales job wasn't working for me, so now I'm going to go and heal people. And then there are the people that are like, you know what? I've got some really big stuff that I'm going through and I need to heal through it and I need to find some doors for that. And that's kind of how it opens up. So, how did you start this? Like, what was your calling into it? And we ask always, because this is important, what was like one of your deepest, darkest times?
So I think the two-part answer for that, I know a big influence for me was my mother. Shout out to my deceased mother, Dr. Maria Guerra. So I grew up with two hematologists oncologists. This had to be a part of the fabric of my DNA because
Yeah.
one of them was very pro holistic, which was my mother, and my father was very by the book hematologist, oncologist, and so they would fight over each other certain things at home, and I was just trying to eat my macaroni and cheese in peace. But I noticed that my mother was just just a different human. She really believed in intention. She was the top of her class in medical school, UCLA Medical School. She came from Peru, so very humble beginnings. And I saw her do certain things to me. Like she would kind of have a machine that would, because you have your in acupuncture, you kind of have like your fetus kind of in your ear, and so she's kind of like doing these sort of pinching sort of mechanisms on the ear to reduce pain from my leg. So I was kind of that was kind of opening up my world a little bit. It wasn't like I'm going to jump into the world. It was just kind of a preview of what she was doing, and also she was kind of a rebel with a cause. I would say is that she would take a lot of her Kaiser patients. Probably illegally to her home to take care of them and check their urine samples and check their lifestyle. And a lot of people were having their cancer healed, and they would stay, healed because of she made certain lifestyle changes with them. And so she was also into Chinese medicine, so she knew acupuncture. I remember waking up as Hellraiser. I just woke up, just a bunch of needles on me, and I was like, Mom, like, what are you doing to me? And she says, I'm trying to take away your nausea before school. So I think that for sure was a big impact to me, and I think she would be very proud of what I'm doing right now. I feel I had a client who had the gift of discernment, and she told me, she's like, there's someone behind you in a white coat. Who is that? This woman. And I think that was my mom kind of watching over me sometimes while I'm working with clients. But I would say the dark night of my soul was definitely being a caretaker for her because she ironically had pancreatic cancer. So she, for a whole entire year, I was with her, seeing her kind of wither away. And so that for me was a very, very dark place for me. And I knew that there was more than, and she tried everything that's sort of holistic to kind of get herself recuperated. So again, she believed it to the end, and I think it did help her, but it was just growing too fast. And so
how old were you when this was happening for you?
So it was back in like 2011. So it's 2000. So I'm 42. So it was like in my early 30s. Yeah, early 30s. And so she died, too young. But again, it's just to see your mother slowly wither away. That's like your hero, and it's amazing too, because she said that the biggest pain for her is of everything would be like not to be able to help another patient. So I knew like where her passion was. And she told me, she said, she showed me a hematology book once, and she said, do you find interest in cells the way I do? And I said, no, that book's a little too much. And then she says, well, then I don't want you to become a doctor, but I need you to find something that you love and you're passionate about. And so she kind of just did a lot of guidance for me.
Yeah, and I mean, it's an interesting time for you because you would have been like, just 30. That's a pivotal time for somebody in their lives. It's when you're starting a new cycle, things start to change for you. So very interesting that you had to come into the role of being a caregiver for somebody. I know how life-changing that is because my mom lost her battle with leukemia this year as well. So, and I was her caregiver through that whole process. I fully understand how ugly a disease cancer is and how hard it is when you're fighting tooth and nail for it. So it's very interesting to me that that's kind of when you opened up more. And so do you think that at that time, did you have faith in your life? Like, was your upbringing religious? Was there a religion that was the foundational energy, or?
So this might take a whole nother podcast in itself, but let's just say this is that I think I was age. This sounds really out there, almost like Tim Burton would have made this screenplay. But
we like this
back,
stuff, yeah.
But back in like
live, Emmanuel,
oh,
so nothing's weird for us.
Okay, so around age 11, I was chased by a wolf at Yosemite Park, and that was actually the first. So I grew up as a Catholic. And as a devout one, I would say I went to Catholic school. I would go to Sunday. I was the little helper for the priest. I'd carry this really heavy cross that I could barely bear.
Altar boy, yeah.
Altar boy. I was an altar boy. I washed his hands, and I was very into it. I really I loved sort of just this idea of a priest, and my father really wasn't there, so I feel like the priest was a form of a father to me, so basically I grew up with that, but we're always taught the Our Father, which is which is a very beautiful prayer, but it's not personal. So technically my first personal prayer was when I was being chased by a wolf at age 11. So
That's a
and
good
it was
time
a
to
very
pray, right?
it's a good time to pray. Yeah, I was very scared, but two big miracles happened after that prayer. Again, that's a whole nother story. But yeah, just that's when I realized I'm like, okay, God exists and He cares about me. Of all the billions of people in the world, He heard me when I was being chased, and things happened that did not make any sense at all. And so that was my first time where a prayer was answered to me. Around age 26, I was investigating. I was thinking about becoming a priest. I was thinking about becoming a Franciscan, taking the oath of poverty.
Wow.
I told my mother, and she freaked out, and I kind of made a comment to her, and I said, okay, so you want me to be like religious, but not like too religious. It's like, and but I told her, I said, I feel stagnant. I feel like I'm stuck. I need to go deeper, and so I kind of quit doing this direct sales business and kind of like went to my cave, and I was in the library every day, just eat food, library, eat food, library. And then I got baptized in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints at age 26. And that's when I really started building my relationship with Christ. And what's interesting, just to let you guys know, is when my mom passed away, I became very aware of sort of premonitions of the Holy Ghost, and I started becoming more aware of like what God's voice kind of sounds like, or what it sounds like in my mind. And if it wasn't for that, I would have missed the opportunity to see my mom for the last 5 hours. I heard a very clear, distinct voice in Mexico when she was passing away that said, "Tonight, don't go to sleep." And I remember, I very clearly felt like a fatherly figure talking to me. I told my sister, I'm not going to bed tonight. I know it's, she's like, oh, can you take the shift? Cause I just feel really tired. We would take 4-hour shifts, like
Right.
holding onto my mom's hand. And literally the shift that I took over, that I heard that voice, she passed away. And I was able to give comfort to all the women in the room. I told her like all the blessings of her, like of her passing away, she'll be able to see our marriages in the future. She'll be able to have no pain when she enjoys it. And everyone was kind of just holding on to my words because they were kind of suffering, And
Right.
so
Right.
I don't think that would have happened unless I had a very close bond with the Savior at that time.
That's beautiful.
And so I don't know a lot about the church that you're in, that you talked about, although I mean I've heard about it. Is there a component of it that allows for spiritual exploration, like mediumship, like talking to God in direct communication? Because I know that there are other churches that completely frown upon that.
Sure. Yeah, so that's what's beautiful about it, is that like I feel that was opened up for me. Like again, the idea of angel visitations and visions and dreams where God communicates with you is very accepted in the church. In fact, it's one of the articles of faith in our church. And so I kind of held on to that because I was like, I think this is the way that God would want it. So a lot of churches believe that God spoke. Our church is more God continues to speak. So it's very different. We believe in active revelation, and so that kind of set me up though. And what was interesting was when I looked into the emotion code. If you want me to kind of veer into like how did I get into the emotion code,
I
body
don't
code?
know anything
Yeah.
about that.
How did you stumble across that for
So
sure?
Yeah,
so
like emotion
the
code and body code. Like what is that and how did you
yeah.
find
So
that?
what happened was so what happened was back in 2015-ish, everything was kind of turned upside down. I tell people I was on the dark side of the moon. So my I was very unhappy with my marriage. There was unfortunately some infidelity going on. There was finances were an issue. My relationship with God could have been closer. I wasn't spending too much time with the kids. Everything was kind of just upside down. And my mentor always told me that whenever you're kind of in an upside down state, it's always good to look into a book. Like every level's a new devil, they would say. So I looked into a book, and my friend recommended the emotion code. And I remember in my mind saying that I've never really got into energy healing, even though technically my mother was semi-involved with it. So it's kind of interesting. But I was very nervous to say, like, okay, I don't want this to be sort of, and because the reality is the way I look at energy healing and energy medicine, they're just tools. They kind of have a neutral energy to it. Depends on who's going into it, kind of like the
Definitely.
internet, like
Yep.
I always tell Christians this. I'm like, there's nothing wrong with the internet. It depends on the end user. It's
Right.
but the internet's just a tool. Same thing with energy though. It's very, gotta be very careful who is the end user, who's the person who's working with it. And I was just kind of nervous when I was reading the emotion code book. I'm like, is he going to mention Jesus in there? Because I feel like all great gifts come from him. Like all
Right.
great gifts come from God. And little by little, it started becoming very blunt in the emotion code that it was that his savior, Jesus Christ. And I was like, okay, cool. So long story short, I said, I'm going to go. My friend started working on my heart wall. So I had trauma around my heart. I'll explain this later on what a heart wall is.
Mhm.
But every time your heart feels pain or feels hurt, we've all felt that. Our body puts these trapped emotions over our heart, these little energies over our heart to stop it from breaking. And if you start stacking them, even from birth, you could absorb them from your mom, and you could create them when you were a baby, and as you move along. That's why sometimes, if you guys notice, when you're children, like the sun seems brighter, the day seems slower, but then when you're older, it's like things are just dimmer. Like, what I'm saying? It's like, what is that?
Right. We lose our brightness a bit. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and some people may say too that, well, ignorance is not there anymore, like you're an adult now, you're paying bills and everything. But I want to challenge that thought and say, we had less heart walls back then. We actually felt
Less
more when we
layers,
were
right?
children. Yeah, less layers. Yes.
Less layers. Yeah.
Yes. So as we grow older, we kind of live in a bomb shelter. We try to hug people through a bomb shelter. I feel like the main core of depression and anxiety is because people don't feel interconnected anymore. We feel separate from others, and so if you live in a bomb shelter and your friend's in a bomb shelter, try to give a hug to someone in that situation. You can't. So you start feeling anxious and depressed because you feel
and
not
isolated,
connected,
right?
isolated.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so my friend started clearing my heart wall, and I started finding out what one of the benefits of clearing your heart wall is to find out your mission in life. And I started staying up really late at night at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning. And my ex at the time would be like, "Hey, you're going to bed?" And I'm like, "No, no, no, I'm just watching some webinar." She's like, "It's 3 a.m. Like, what are you doing?"
Right.
I was like, "Oh," and I realized the time stopped, like, for me. And I was like, I could basically dive into emotion code information all day. So
Right.
that's when I said, okay, there's something to this. And
Right.
so
Right.
I'm gonna help as many people as I can. And within a year, I was working with about 120 clients a week. So I got very, very
Wow.
busy. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I became good friends with Dr. Brad. I told him, hey, listen, I went full time pretty quickly. I would love to help out other practitioners go full time. We're at 5,000 practitioners. We should be at 500,000. How do we get this going? And he became good friends with me, and yeah, the rest is history after that. So so that's kind of how I started my practice.
And so and of course, I mean, I understand the body code, the emotion code, because I've had sessions with you. I've done energy work with you. And just to show you, so just even though I've been, in this realm, in the healing realm of, as a traditional Chinese medicine acupuncture practitioner, you name it, done it all, kind of. Whenever I seek out anybody that I'm going to go to help for, I always do a really good kind of like energetic feel into them, right? And Emanuel is saying this, it's so important
Yeah.
when you are seeking somebody to be your helper, your healer, your guide, that you have a resonance with them for sure. And then also, and this is Spirit just saying this, the proof is in the pudding. So these happen to be the tools that Emmanuel uses. They are the kind of things that either you go to it and you feel different after, like you're like, oh yeah, that shifted or that changed, or you don't. And so for me, when I was working with Emmanuel, I felt like I could feel these energies leaving me that I really kind of didn't even have the awareness that they were there. Like I knew that there was stuff that was weighing me down. I knew that there was stuff that was holding me back from my healing because it was taking way too long. But I didn't know I didn't, and it was also that thing. It's like, you know, even if somebody says to us, oh, well, you have, and Emmanuel, you can talk to us more about the process of the heart wall stuff. But okay, so great, I've got this heart wall thing, but now what do I do? Like, how do I get rid of this? Like, obviously I don't want it. How do I get rid of it? And so that's the kind of work that you do, right? When you are, and so tell us a little bit about because you use kinesiology, right? You're connecting with, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you're connecting with the higher self of the person you're working with. So not necessarily their mind or their ego, or right. You're having a direct connection with their essence, right?
Yeah, so great question. And so the way it works is it actually looks very logical, because there's so much energy healing out there, which I like theta healing and Reiki healing. There's so many cool healings out
Yes.
there,
Yeah.
but some of them could feel sort of not esoteric, but more like non-tangible. Like it's kind of like, what are they doing with their hands? What are they
Right. Right.
what are they ripping out? And what I love about the body code is I feel like my logical mind was able to make sense of it very clearly. So if you're
Absolutely. Yeah.
a lot of people would love to have something more logical, like age emotion, something that's like tangible, you know. And so chiropractors since the 1940s, 1950s have been using muscle testing, pushing down on someone's arm, asking certain questions to see what imbalances are in the body. So this has been happening for a while. Again, tapping into your subconscious. Like your subconscious is like it's a memory bank, you know, and it remembers every corner you've turned, every tear you've dropped.
Right.
Conscious brain, not so much. Like 2 weeks ago, we don't know what we ate for breakfast. Like,
Right.
you know, so but the subconscious records everything, and so we tap into that master computer that God already put inside of us. So that's what I love, is that God created this thing, and sometimes Dr. Brad uses an exchange of subconscious and spirit too. He kind of coexist in some ways, terminology wise. But basically, you're just kind of connecting with someone's subconscious, asking certain questions. Then by using magnet with a magnet, any type of magnet, your Hello Kitty magnet on your on your refrigerator, and with love and intention, with love and gratitude, you're asking for a trapped emotion to release. And what he uses is really powerful. It's called the governing meridian, which is this. There's all these freeways of energy that are going through your body. People who are familiar with the acupuncture system, they're aware of these meridians. But this one goes from this one's kind of the motherboard. It goes from your upper lip all the way to the back of your spine. So with the intention of, as soon as you find out, okay, which trapped emotion you have, and you're going through a chart, so you go like left side, right side, okay, right side. Is it even or is it odd? And then you basically go from 60 emotions to like one, you know, you find that one. And then you sometimes don't need to know more about it. Do you need to know more about it? It says no. Okay. Sometimes if it says yes, then you go, okay, what age did you trap this emotion? So I think it's good for your audience to know, like, what is a trapped emotion? You know, what is that? And really, I thought my mind is the one that creates all the emotions, but really, what Dr. Brad found out is that your liver, let's say, produces anger, bitterness, guilt, hatred, resentment. That's why when people drink too much alcohol or drink too much caffeine, the liver's kind of fatty. They're producing those emotions more readily: anger, bitterness, guilt, hatred,
And
resentment.
this is not something new. So this is not something that Dr. Brad's come up. This is from traditional Chinese medicine, which happens to be the oldest medicine on the planet.
Exactly. And fun fact is, a lot of people kind of sometimes make fun of the chakra system, but in Chinese medicine, Chinese history medicine, that was the first system they found before they started analyzing the bodies, you know? And so what's interesting is that, so with that method of asking, you know, what emotion is stuck there, what symptom is it contributing to, then you use a magnet on the person. It could be on their head, it could be on their back, but you're just rubbing it 3 times to remove it. If it's inherited, then you rub it 10 times. So it's a very scientific method to get rid of these trapped emotions. And then you confirm it. Did we release that trapped emotion? And the arm should be strong. And but you can do that with the ring and ring method, which is what I use. And instead of using a magnet on my head, which I used to do, which was really fun, because when I was on the phone, they would hear a, you know, and they'd be like, "Oh, what sound is that?" It's just a tractor going by. But what I would use is your fingers have a magnetic charge to it, and my left middle finger is kind of represents the in Korean acupuncture represents the spine. And so when I'm connecting proxy with someone, I can just do this, and it's the same thing as if the person were here in the office and I'm just kind of rubbing their back. So they get all the benefit. I'm just here in proxy for them. That's the term. And so,
Can I ask
but
a question? Just
sure.
really, because Jodi had a lot of really good questions, and I just want to make sure that I remember to ask this. As you're talking, I'm getting a lot of vision and a lot of understandings from my own personal perspective, right? So the
Sure, yeah.
energy that I do. And what I'm being shown is that, a lot of what you're doing is a lot of what shamans actually would have done in previous, in previous cultures. Like shamans would go in and remove these denser energies that would have come
Hmm.
from the frequencies of emotion and thought and other things. And so
Hmm.
what do you think about that? Do you think that there is a level of shamanistic practice to what you do? Because it sounds a lot like it. I mean, not the scientific back and forth in that, but the idea and the understanding of trapped emotions that need to be released to make your
Yeah.
life a better place.
So I would say they're in the same they're in the same field, but they could be like different games in the field. So what I mean by that is that, for example, in the history of the shaman, for example, they use herbs and medicine, some sort of sacred medicine to use, which there's so many ways to release these emotions. So, for example, as you're processing and crying and releasing yourself, the shaman's goal is to obviously guide the person to enlightenment, is to guide them through it, and they're releasing energies, just as I release energies. Now, could the shaman learn muscle testing and see, what we did today? We actually released this. He could get more specific, but I don't think the person at that time was really looking for that. They were just looking for a form of release. What I do is I kind of combine the logic of like, this is exactly the emotion we removed at this age. This one was inherited. This one was
Right.
from your mom that you absorbed. So it's a lot more, again, more technical, I would say, but technically it's the same thing. So that's why I give kudos and my hats off to those who do breath work. People who do breath work are also releasing emotions. It's a way of removing emotions. But yeah, so I guess there's some similarity in regards to that. Technically, they're all releasing emotions, but I feel like Dr. Brad's system is just a lot more in detail of what actually is being removed, if that makes sense.
And spirit's just reminding me that it's resonance. It's an entry point for people, right? So there's
Mm-hmm.
lots of different ways of getting
Yes.
energy
Mm-hmm.
work done, and that you're going to find your resonance and your entry point. So, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
thank you. That's just something I wanted to ask.
And so I think it's important to let our listeners know that this is also a modality that is very self-empowering. So yeah, it's great to go and you can see somebody who does it like Emmanuel, but this is also something that you can do yourself, right? This
Mm-hmm.
is
Mm-hmm.
something that and it's very interesting because if you have the book, if you read the book completely goes into, the charting, the things that you can go into. So you yourself can sit there and be like, you know what, I'm having a bad day. I can't get in with Emmanuel today, but let me
Mm-hmm.
just go in and see like what's coming up. And it's very interesting because I feel like an important step on anybody's journey is their self discovery and their self connection.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're having to ask yourself, through kinesiology, through the muscle testing of like, okay, does this apply to us? Does this, and you get
Mhm.
the vibrational feedback of your body, again, that's like it's validation because you were like, oh, well, and Emmanuel, maybe you can just give us some examples. But when you're going through some of the charts, like, okay, say something comes up when you're a child at this age, and you go, yeah, you know what? That did. That something came up at
Mm-hmm.
what at that time in my life. I can remember this part of it. And then,
Mm-hmm.
the practitioner asks you, well, is this something that we need to clear? Was it inherited? You go through all that and it presents this really detailed story
Mm-hmm.
of who you are. And then the important part is that it's not permanent. All of that stuff that's been weighing you down, all that stuff
Gone,
that's
yeah.
been causing your stuff, it's removable, right? That's
Yes, yeah, and honestly, my favorite line to tell clients is there is so much hope. Look how far you've gone in life
right.
carrying this baggage, and look how you've managed. Like you've done actually pretty well to either one
Yeah.
suppress it or you use other techniques to release it.
Hmm.
But the reason why, again, I kind of favor the body code is because it has over 250 hyperlinks. It's really, it goes deep into mental, physical, all the different systems.
Right.
So something I don't really mention to a lot of the people that I know on social media, for example. But in the last 7 months, I've had two clients that have had the C word, the NC, start with a C, end with an R, and one of them was pancreatic, and the other one was stage 4 of
Right.
kidney, and they don't have it anymore. And the
Wow.
reality is that according to the book, it says 80% of people's physical symptoms stems from emotional baggage. So
Right. Right.
really,
Gabor
how
Mate would say the same thing, right? He in his work,
exactly.
Gabor Mate's work, that's what he talks about is the link between our emotional baggage, unreleased emotion, and illness. So you've got a lot of really good heavy hitters behind what you do, even though they may not be talking the same
Yeah.
language. It's the same stuff, right? And it's really important.
Totally. And I also, I'll share with you a really quick story, kind of an interesting one. Is I remember I was working with a client once, and she had dyslexia, and she was age 19, and I worked on her heart wall already, and but she didn't tell me that she had dyslexia. Like, she kind of like told me late, kind of like, oh, by the way, I have this. Like, well,
Right.
we should try to work on that.
Right.
And but it's interesting is that I kept, when I was working with her, I started seeing some what they call spiritual to physical disconnections. Here's just an example: spiritual to physical disconnection, and I also found physical to physical disconnection. So
Mm.
I went into, and the difference is very simple. Spiritual to physical disconnection means there were parts of her brain where the spiritual lobe was sticking out from the physical, either due to pathogens or trauma. And then physical to physical means that two parts of her brain were not communicating correctly. And
Wow.
every time I was working with her, it was really interesting. It was like age 12. It's like, oh, age 12, age 12. And so then it was, and then at age 9, age 12, age 9, you know? And I had to ask her, I was like, okay, at this point, I'm really curious what happened those 2 days. And
Right.
she told me very frankly, she says, those are the two biggest times where my father was very abusive to me.
Wow.
And she even remembers, it's like he threw her in a closet, all these different things. And after she was done, she was able to read for the first time ever. And then she
Wow.
didn't believe it at first. She said, "This is not possible." And then I
Right.
said, "Okay, so what do you want to do to prove it that it's wrong? You know, go
Mhm.
ahead." She's like, "Tomorrow I'll read it, but with smaller writing. So for sure I can't read that." And then she read the next day with smaller writing. And then I think that she tested even again. She said, "I'll test when I'm really tired. Maybe if I'm tired, I can't
Right.
read."
Still wasn't
You know,
believing yet.
and then, yeah,
Yeah.
and then after the second or third day, she finally says, "No, I've tried these different instances, and
Right.
I can still read." So again, that's just proof that she was holding on to her trauma. She wasn't allowing the body to exhale. She was holding. Everyone's kind of holding their breath when they
Right.
walk around, and the body code allows them. And there's other modalities too to just finally just let it go,
Mhm.
and then see long term results for it too. So it's a very beautiful thing when they have a breakthrough like that, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, the proof is in the pudding. When you're seeing somebody have results like that, there's that stuff is not going to show up on a medical test. It's not going to show up in her blood work. It's not going to be
Mm-hmm,
something that, her doctor can prescribe for her to help her with that. But
mm-hmm,
here we have a modality that acknowledges that, yes, because we are vibrational beings and we carry emotional energy and
Mhm.
traumas and everything is frequency, then of course it's going to affect how we heal.
mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Spirit
and
is saying triggers. They're bringing the word triggers forward, and so when I do a lot of the inner child energy work that I do, a lot of the times people are coming in because they're having these big triggers and they're not understanding them. And you follow the energy code and the energy sequence, and it's usually like you're talking about this event or series of events in childhood. Um,
mhm.
do you work like can you talk to the audience about how they can look at triggers as an understanding of maybe something that they're holding on to from way back, because triggers is one of those words Spirit saying that we throw it around but we don't really understand the emotional and spiritual implications of it.
Yeah, so that's a great question. So in regards to triggers, there's two words that are kind of caught my attention when you were talking. One of them in the body code system is called idea allergy. So idea allergy, and then there's idea intolerances. So those I can cater to two types of people: people who have anxiety and they kind of all of a sudden go fight or flight mode, or people who get their eyes turn red and they're upset and they want to break something, right? So and both of those, for example, too, like a typical doctor would probably say that diagnose them as someone who has PTSD, but the reality is that no medication will solve the root of it.
Right.
The person needs to know that there's an actual energy that can be extracted from the body. So an allergy, for example, you can have an allergy to being overpowered. Okay. But so that, and that's a list of like 80 things in a chart that I can look at. And one of them, and a muscle test, and be like, oh, look, yours is being overpowered. Now, here's the interesting thing. It could be theirs. So I'll say, is this yours? And if it says no, I'm kind of doing the hand solo here. Then it must be inherited. Okay, well, did it come from the mom? No, did it come from the dad? Okay, the dad. Does it go beyond the dad? It does. And so then I start asking, how far does it go? And then I actually get their number. It's like 20, I'll be like 17 generations. Okay, I found it. Here's the beautiful part that I love about this work. And for those of you who believe in the spirit world and things like that. One time when I went to an event, Brad found an inherited emotion. And what's interesting is that he says, so he would ask, is your dad still alive? No, he passed away. He says, so there's 17 people in this generational line that's carrying this allergy. So then he would say, are these 17 people here? And the arm would test positive. So, and the weird part of it, he would kind of have fun with them. He would say, are they in that corner over there? And then the arm would go down. You're like, are they on that corner there? No. Are they somewhere in center stage right here? And the arm would test positive.
Right.
So it's beautiful. You would basically, they would come for the healing. Right. It honors the healing that is being done there to that generational son. Right. And they come to experience it. And then they go, okay, great. We removed it. Are they still here? And the arm would test negative. And then and then Brad would say, yeah, they're busy. They have other things to do, like they're, And so, but what's really cool is that they come. And then also what's beautiful is that I would work with a mother. Let's say she had an allergy that's inherited. If it passed down, I would check to see if it passed down to the son or the daughter. And then I would remove it, and the daughter would change right before their eyes. And say, man, my daughter's been different. You haven't worked on my daughter once. I'm like, yeah, but I've worked on you 4 times, and we've at least released maybe 7 to 8 inherited emotions. Right. That's why she's changing before you.
Yeah, the ripple effect. Spirit talks about the ripple effect all the time, for sure.
It's quantum, right? It's that when we talk about quantum healing, people like, again, they're Spirit saying another word that people throw about and they don't really understand. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about healing in the now, but you're really healing in spaces that are still existing in times that we just can't see, right? So it has those gorgeous links when you're doing quantum healing. And
exactly.
But God, that's what I always say. I'm like, who can do something that fantastic but God, right?
Exactly. Like I feel like if anything, that one of God's major priorities is the preservation of the sanctity of the family. It's the most sacred unit, and everything rises and falls on the family. That's how you crumble a society, is you destroy the family. And so I think it makes, whenever I tell people, I'm like, how beautiful is it that I can work with a mother, let's say their child is in a different country, and then I can work with the permission of this mother, as long as he's under 18, I can work on this child. This child doesn't have to know that I'm working on them. Why is that a benefit to the child? Is because there's trauma just even having the mother tell them sometimes, going like, hey, you know what? Like, you've got some problems. We're kind of worried about you. It's like,
the resistance comes up, right?
We don't think about how the child computes that. Right. And that it actually could make more trauma, going like, why am I different? Why is there something wrong with me, or I'm broken? But why don't we just avoid that? And why don't I just get permission from the mom, work with the child, and help that child's depression? In my experience, what you were saying, Leah, is that like God has no limits to his love, and so that child can be touched from long distance, and it comes in the Bible too. The Corinthian, the soldier who had his servant, who had problems, and he was saying, he's like, Jesus, can you come and help out my servant? And he says, yes, I'd like to help him out. He says, "Oh, you don't have to go anywhere. I just you say the word, and I know he'll be
Give me
healed."
permission. Yeah.
It's, you know, and then so he had that much, and then he basically told all his disciples, "I have never seen so much faith as this person here."
Right.
He's not even a disciple, you know. He
Right.
just came out of nowhere, and then all of a sudden, it said in the scripture there, it says at the same time. So the guy ran back to his house. He says at the same time, people noticed that that child was changed. At the
Right.
time when he said, you know, he's healed. So
Right.
that he's showing, you know, Jesus just talks to things. We have to kind of work with quantum entanglement, but he just speaks into things. It's just different.
Right.
It's a higher
And
level
so,
of
so
it.
do you find that for a lot of people that you know, a big part of what's kind of holding their healing back are like the suppressed traumas, the, you know, the dramas that, and the things that
I see.
their mind is not allowing them to talk about. So like, just as an example, so just you know, I lost my dad in a car accident when I was 2.5. My mom and I were both in the car accident with him. And for the majority of my life, like, you know, when people would say, you know, "Oh my God, that was horrible." Like how, like, I would kind of like just be like, "Oh, it's okay. I don't remember anything about it." And it would be nothing. But of course, you know, later on my healing journey, I learned that there was a lot of trauma and
Mm-hmm.
wounding there that I like either was not ready to see, was not. Do you find that with people that there's so much that they're like, I really don't wanna see this. Like, I'm afraid what I'm going to see.
Yeah. So one of the things that one of my missions in life, and besides having my practice and helping people in general, is that I want to help men get in touch with their divine feminine. You know, and so in order for us, in order for this world to get to where it needs to go, is
Right.
that men need to get in touch with their inner child and kind of do that. To repair all the damage that we've basically done on this earth, you know. So,
Mhm.
so basically, but one of the things is that I would tell them, one of my favorite mantras was less talk, more healing, you know. So I would
Okay.
sometimes give them, if there's a very, if there was a very sensitive subject, I would give them sort of like a token word. Like, is there a word that you use that maybe if you know the age and the emotion, that you just say the word, the token word, and it tells me like, okay, like we don't have to talk about that. Let's just get rid of it. And the
Mhm.
body doesn't need to talk about it, like, you know, because
Right.
very rarely does it ask for more information than just the age. Maybe the age was just to help them. But
Right.
intuitively, I've met like all these children who like they've told me very bluntly, like, I for some reason my memory is really good when I talk to you, but then when I go back to normal life, it's like it's okay, like, you know. And I tell them, I'm like, it's not really your memory, it's more of your intuition. Like
Right.
we first of all we ask for help from above, so that helps. And number
Right.
two, your body wants you to have the best healing experience ever, so it's going to intuitively pull up memories for you, but we don't have to talk about them.
Mhm.
And so as soon as I kind of, even if I hear a hesitation, I'm like, oh yeah, I know what that is. I'm like, okay, like I even jump to the conclusion, okay, we don't have to talk about it. Let's just get rid of it, you know?
Mhm.
So,
Right.
but if they are willing to talk, I even say, hey, we'll actually get more healing done if you just share one or two sentences. We don't have to go into it.
Right. And I think that's because I think sometimes when we have to go in and think that we need to relive the trauma and we have
Hmm.
to talk
Yeah.
about it again, and then of course
Yeah.
when we're doing that, we are literally reliving it all because our brain
Yes.
does not know when something is being imagined or it's actually happening.
Yeah.
So
Very, yeah, that is a really, really good point. In fact, to piggyback off what you just said, I always tell people the biggest fights happen in marriage counseling on the car ride home, because because the counselor didn't realize that they just activated all the emotional
Yeah.
baggage.
And
And
then
it's
we're just
literally yeah, and literally it's like if you what's kind of cool is, you know, I once saw on stage Brad say, "Hey, what does a trapped emotion feel like?" See, so when you start feeling an emotion, the ball of energy starts kind of swimming near the surface of the body. And I
Mhm.
remember him like actually touching one and saying, "It'll always feel like a cold wind on your hand." And so he would actually find it on the person's body and kind of muscle test to see where it is. And
Right.
but so it's a real sphere of energy that needs to be
Mhm.
removed. But can you imagine the counselors saying all this stuff and then pop, 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 just
Right.
popcorned the male and the female, and then they
Right.
leave with all the allergies, and then
Right.
boom, they just explode, and then it gets worse, you know.
With
So
all
my
of the
my
stuff
my
at the surface. Yeah.
exactly,
what do
and
you
I would, yeah, go ahead.
sorry. what do you say for people who have like multiple experiences? So there are going to be like, you may be with an experience with an experience with an experience. Do they need to go through the drip of every single one? Or is there a way of doing a collective when you've got a person in front of you who's been through, you know, unfortunately, a lot of people have grown up in abusive homes where it's not just one or two traumatic events, it's multiple and it's regular, right? So, and then there's also neglect that people go through that creates the same amount of havoc, right? With our emotion as children. So, how do you work with people who maybe have multiple and many instances?
There's two ways to approach that. Either like we haven't talked about this yet, but like I was certified in group
I
healing,
was
you know,
just gonna go there.
yeah,
That's
I'm certified in group healing. So there's ways that you can kind of just write your top three intentions. You can say many years of this certain abuse that I would like to have peace from. You know, like you have to say it in the positive present tense. You know, it's a place for you to activate it for yourself. You just write your intentions, and then I work on those for 7 days. But technically, that client only left that energy of their comment, and their that's going to be their main reason why they joined the room, but they don't talk about it anymore. So they get 7 days of healing, and I'm telling them what activations I'm doing. Monday I'm doing this, Tuesday I'm doing this, and it's kind of encompassing everything that they're dealing with, but technically they only left 3 notes there. You know, so that's one way to do it. The second way to do it is this thing called attunement. So attunement actually means that how much peace do you have with this? Let's say you have a history of bullying, you know? So I would just say, I have complete peace with all the bullying I've experienced in my life. And I would muscle test them and be like, you're at 27.3296%. Okay, so and what I'll probably find there, Leah,
Does it really get that specific?
Oh
Like
yeah,
29,
oh yeah,
wow.
yeah.
Okay.
It would actually, it would actually, to be nerdy about it, you can actually get it to the 100th plus decimal, and your body is it's a master of mathematics.
I'm gonna come in
It's a
just for
master
the
of
experience.
mathematics.
I'm coming in just for the experience. I'm so incredibly interested in this.
Yeah, so just it would be like again, just it would give you a number, and then I would say, okay, what energies would come up, and I could already intuitively know that if they have a history of things, I know what energy is probably going to pop up. I'm not going to assume because I need to muscle test it, but it's memory fields. So memory fields are memories that are kind of in front of your eyes subconsciously. If you have a lot of these, actually it causes vision problems, but you have these memories, and they usually have a theme to it. Like I can even test to see what's the theme. It might be like betrayed, or it might be resentment, you know. And
That's so
basically
interesting.
these memory fields could be literally 100 to like hundreds or hundreds of thousands of memories. And when I'm swiping that one, it's moving behind their head now, so their subconscious doesn't tap into it as quickly. So that would be another way that I don't have to go through every single bully that they had. It'd probably show up as, it'd be better to do an attunement, and then I'm probably 90% I'm going to find a memory field, and the memory field's going to just take a net of it, just like a big net, and just fish all those memories and kind of move it behind them.
That's
And
very
then
cool.
they're going to feel a lot of peace with that time. Yeah.
And so if our listeners wanted to get an attunement versus, you know, I mean, how would they decide? Do you give, like, how do people know what they need? Where do they start?
Yeah, so typically when I work with someone brand new, my first objective is to have them believe that their body is healing, right? So they need that belief, you know, first. And so first of all, I already have the faith of a mustard seed. They talk about that in the scriptures because they showed up. So there's the faith of the mustard seed. They showed up. They could have flaked on me, right? But then once I get that, I go, what areas do you have pain in? Go ahead and stand up real quick, move your neck, move your shoulders. There's always some area they have pain or tension. So that's technically when I first meet with someone new, is like my goal is to lower that pain down 70 to 90% within 10 minutes. That's like my goal, you know? And the reason why I do that is because I have to find emotional trauma to lower it down. And I'm going to be very specific with ages and emotions so that they can have mental recognition of timelines. So that's the first thing I'm going to do. And once her pain goes down, they'll be like, hey, actually my left shoulder feels better. Now we're off to the races. And typically when you might say, where do we go? If we have so many, let's say we have relationship, finance, we have all these different things. One of my favorite things to recommend would say, let's let your higher self choose which subject we should go into. And higher self will always get you to the fastest route possible. And haven't heard a complaint in 10 years if someone said, no, higher self went the wrong way. It always, the higher self said, that made a mistake. That was the wrong way. No, the higher self literally knows, I'll go here first. And what's interesting is that it won't stay in that subject. There's two things interesting about the higher self that I love. One is it doesn't typically stay in that subject the whole time. It may work on it for 6 minutes, and then it'll bounce out. It's like, oh, it seems like your higher self wants to go somewhere else. Let's go look in your list again. And then I go somewhere else. And there's a reason for that. That's one cool thing the higher self does. Number two is that it's usually working on multiple things at the same time. So someone that's like, I have lower back pain, I'll work on their adrenals, but then on their list is brain fog and fatigue. And I'm like, yeah, we're still working on the adrenals, but we're working on 3 to 4 other things that's on the list already. It just has to pick one for our mental rationality, but it's actually working on 5 things. So I'm not a multitasker because I'm what they call a man, so I'm not, but women are, but the higher self is a multitasker. It's kind of that's the feminine side of higher self. It's like, I can do 8 things at the same time, so.
Love that.
Well, and one thing I want everybody to know just about Emanuel, because there are many people out there that do the body code and the emotion code. It's not hard to find a practitioner near you. But again, when you go to somebody, at least for me, I want to make sure that the person I'm going to see is using their higher self, their intuition, their guidance. I don't want them to just be reading from a book or looking on a computer screen, and because right, I can get that from a doctor. I'm going to a healer for energy healing, and Emanuel makes sure that and as somebody myself who reads energy for a living, he's somebody who is 100% connecting to your higher self through his higher self. And you can see and feel that exchange when you're working with him, which is cool.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm blushing over here a little bit.
Talking how connected he is.
My aura is blushing.
That's awesome.
But
They won't see that on the podcast anyways.
Okay, good.
So I want to ask you though, because you are doing something that's relatively new, right? I think that you've been kind of like studying it, learning it for a long time, and that is the regression hypnotherapy. So what called you to go to that, and how are you using that with people?
So regression hypnotherapy was, first of all, I think it's the job of a true healer to do a couple of things. Number one is to let you know that you can heal by yourself. So I like what you mentioned, Jodi, earlier, that you're like, that they could use the tool on themselves, that they're not to be so codependent on the healer, right? And maybe do both. Why not? You work on yourself and I work on you too. Like that could totally happen. But the second thing is that the healer should be open to all tools that are available to them. Just because some tools resonate more with others, and then sometimes we have to go deeper. So I read a book called and of course I forget the name of it. There it is. It's Limitless Soul. Limitless Soul by Bryn Blankenship. By Bryn Blankenship. And I read it during an airport ride. Sometimes I fell asleep, but then I woke up. The first thing I just kept reading. And by the time I got home, my wife saw me literally bright, like glowing. And she's like, what have you been doing? And I'm like, you have no idea what I just read, and she's like, so you gotta tell me about it, because you look different, and so then I told how crazy, God works. That night I said, let me read just a few chapters and let me know if you feel anything when I'm reading this to you. So she's reading it and I'm reading with her, and she's like, wow, this is kind of incredible. She goes to her website and it says there's only 27 minutes left for a special promotion where I only do 1 certification a year, and there was like 27 minutes left to get the special discount. I was just like, submit, and so I mean, you couldn't have planned that.
That's
If
a
I would have,
sign. Definitely a
yeah, it's
sign.
I
That's a
mean,
sign.
definitely a sign. Yeah. So I dove into it, and my wife was just reminding me today. Actually, she's so sweet. She said that I was getting her the certification while it was her birthday, but I still sent her to like a wellness spa, massage, whatever. But that would never typically happen. But she took the sacrifice, just like, hey, he's studying something.
Right.
But I realized that I'm also kind of talking someone back into their life. And I also believe in like what they call like the preconception. It's like before
Right.
you were born, there
Yeah.
was, we were learning from our creator, growing our talents. You can take someone back there so they know more about themselves. Even my favorite thing is that I feel like if people can find their mission in life, I think everything will kind of, if you find your gifts and talents, and you get to know your creator, and you know your mission, you're
Right.
unstoppable. Those are
Right.
the elements of an unstoppable person.
I would agree for
And
sure.
so
I
if I
agree
can
with
get
that. Yeah.
people to clear their heart wall, but then they can also get some special recognition. Yeah, and if people can go back in time and go to their womb, I was fascinated by how much your baby version of yourself knows, why you chose your parents, and why you chose this life, this time in Earth, and why you're here. What's the lesson to learn here in this
Right.
life?
Right.
And that could be also very empowering to someone, because then there's no such thing as a victim anymore,
Right.
because
Right.
and so if we can erase that word. But the only way you do this, they have to go deep into their subconscious. It's like talking to someone to say, oh, get over it, or oh, it's like
That doesn't
that's
work.
gaslighting at an all-time level.
Right.
But
Right.
if you can allow someone to be open and take them back, and they experience it for themselves,
Right.
it becomes it doesn't become doctrine anymore. It's reality, and
Yeah.
that's where you want people to learn, and this is in a new, more open reality.
Yeah. And it's so, I mean, it was years and years and years ago that we actually had a master hypnotherapist in our wellness center, Dr. Yvonne Oswald, and she was running classes. And so we had people that were getting certified in it. And I watched for a couple of years of people doing this. And then one year I was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to be like one of the students in the class. I'm going to take the certification course and do it. And it blew my mind in so many ways, like so many, just the experiences that you have when you go under, and the
Mm-hmm.
lifetimes that you can recall, and
Mm-hmm.
the putting the pieces together of, okay, so here I was a traditional Chinese doctor in, like, the beginning of time, and I had all these potions. And so you can pull these things together to have this recognition that I think it broadens your perspective, because then you're not, you know what, I'm not just this mere mortal human that you see here. I have all of these aspects to who I am, which
Mm-hmm.
again, I feel like is very empowering, right? That
Mm-hmm.
it empowers us to know that. And then also a big healing thing was when you're going back into the womb and having the emotional connection with my parents.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
that's so
Right? Having
healing,
the
right?
connecting to my mom in that moment where
So
she,
healing.
she's, for me, she was standing at the kitchen sink at my grandpa's and tuning into the energy that she was. And then my dad walks into the room, and then picking up on that, you have all of a sudden an understanding of, like, oh my God, these two were just young people that were doing their best and were
Yeah.
clearly, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
it opens up the really, really big perspective of who I am, where I come from, why I chose those parents,
Yeah.
why they, the good, the bad, the ugly, all that.
Yeah, and to piggyback off that, this is like my favorite conversation, by the way, Jodi. So, but one of the things that I made a whole presentation on, that I showed my wife, and she loved it, and I did it for a company actually, is I said that we actually have an identity crisis, and I
Right.
tell people all the time that the reason why the world is where it is right now is due to the fact that people don't know who they really are,
Right. Right.
and
Right.
what regression hypnotherapy does, what body code does, not only does body code help you to heal, but it allows you to be like, wait a minute, I'm like a trapped emotion creating machine. So
Right.
that means that I've been programmed and I can unprogram myself.
It can be
Then when you do it
unprogrammed.
with then when you do regression hypnotherapy, you're like, I'm not just this fleshy meat. Like I was a spirit body before. I've had, I've had some spirit experience. I'm now a physical body.
Right.
Like we're going through, like when we get later on, we believe in the resurrection. I mean, we're like used to like incarnations in some shape or form. And it's like we're a lot deeper than we are. Like we're not just what you see right
No.
here. And again, people need to know that. Like so, I in my video, I say, you're not your school status, you're not your grades, you're not your
Right.
job, you're not your title as a mother or father. You're way bigger than that. We just
Mhm.
have to fit your huge spirit into your physical body, but you're just this big being that can overcome this stuff. You're like prepared for everything you're dealing with in life.
Right.
And so these are tools that will help you to remind you that you're this big being instead of this like sluggish,
Struggling
woman
human.
suit, this
Struggling
Yeah.
struggling man
human.
suit walking around.
Right.
You're not that. It's not. And our job was not. I love there's a really beautiful. There's two books that I recommend your audience that really shaped my life a lot. This obviously besides the scriptures, but the one was understanding the map of consciousness is a really a big one for me, because what you were saying, Jodi, is so true that people are doing the best they can at the level of consciousness that they're at. See,
Right.
so if you can learn how to forgive and love everyone by the end of your life, you've made it.
Right.
But you
Right.
can't do that unless it's easier to do it through the understanding of the book, Understanding the Map of Consciousness, because I can muscle test, let's say like Leah had a brother, and I can muscle test and be like, oh, he's at level 220, like, on the map. Okay. Then you kind of study the person who's in that level of 220. You might be Leah, like, hey, you know what? Like he's kind of mean towards me, kind of does this, whatever, blah, blah. But then you look at him on the map, it's like that makes sense. This is how he sees God. This is his common emotions. This is how he
Mhm.
typically filters life.
Right. So
And
you have
then
a
and
bigger
when you
understanding of him. Yeah.
yeah, you have an understanding of people, and then that's where forgiveness comes in. You're
Right.
like,
Beautiful.
he's technically doing the best he can
Right.
on that level.
Would you not say that that's basically what the whole ascension journey is? That is such a big chat in the big talk in the spiritual world, is that, we're on this ascension journey. And what that really is finding ourselves back into the truest version of our souls, right? Heaven on earth, the soul in the human body,
Mhm,
right? And I feel like what you
mhm,
said, if you can get to the end of your life where you've forgiven everyone, you've basically done that, as much as
mhm.
possible. But what about people who say, who don't have a lot of faith? What about people who have been, really tested to the point where there isn't faith? And so where does the biology of belief come into this kind of work? Because I feel like it has a big part of what we do as energy workers.
Yeah, so with someone who's been kind of kicked down and kind of been through some really hard times, one of the things that I think is very, very key is that we need to be more listeners than talkers. And so just kind of listening to where they come from. Again, they're looking for some type of proof that there's hope. And
Mhm.
so I kind of still revert back to pain, because pain is such a good tangible thing. And I've I've met with some men, with the big beard, very alpha male, crossed arms, crossed legs, cross eyes, cross hairs. I've met with that guy, and so I'd have fun with them on Zoom, and I would say, hey, because back in the day, I used to do Zoom calls. I don't do them anymore, but I'd say, um, you don't know why you're here meeting with me. He's like, no. I was like, your wife made you meet with me, didn't she? He's like,
Right.
yep.
Right.
And I'm like, you have no idea what I do. And he's like, no.
Right.
And he's like, and you actually probably would rather just shut off the Zoom call. He's like, yep. And so I'm like, but hey, listen, I just want to give you some credit. Is that if you didn't have even a little bit of faith, you would have missed the Zoom call.
Right. You wouldn't be here. I
You wouldn't
love
be
those
here.
moments because so back in the day too. So when I would do the group mediumship, right? So you'd
Mhm,
have a big audience in front of you doing it live. There would always be, men in the audience that their
yeah.
wives dragged them there to it. And always, always, always their spirit people would show up. You would be right on, honed in on them, and you would see their body language. Their arms are crossed. They're like, this is a bunch of woo woo. I'm not. And thank God, spirit would come through with like such specific things for them. And you would see these grown men start to cry. And it would just open the entire room's energy field, because if somebody like that, so closed off, so not open to it, has that moment, that connection with higher self spirit, and has that renewed faith, right? That's life changing. It's
Yeah.
absolutely life changing.
That's awesome that you got to witness that. I had a one time I had a 6 hour meditation once, and I remember that these men came in front of me, and it was this weird thing that happened. I started talking to them and saying, "Hey, like, I'm here not to judge you, and I what your father did to you wasn't fair,
Right.
and I just want to hear you out." And something when I was meditating, I saw literally these scales on their eyes, and I was trying to remove these scales from
Wow.
their eyes, and then I was asking, my higher self, like, what are these scales? And very clearly came in programming, and I said,
Hmm.
okay, so they're programmed. And then as soon as I removed the programming, their child version of themselves came to like embrace me. And I was like, okay, like, that's the real them,
Right.
Yeah.
technically. Also, we can say that when an adult has a trigger moment, it's also their inner child having a tantrum,
Right.
so
Right.
we're basically, like, all of us are like little kids in adult suits in one way or another. We
Hmm.
just want to play, we just want to, like, have fun, we want to enjoy life, but one of the things that's there's a book called Return from Tomorrow. That was the other kind of cool book. And this guy was in a coma for about 12 minutes, or I think 20 minutes, and he's from the military, and he saw everything. He saw the spirit world, he saw all these beautiful things.
Right.
But my favorite question, when you were talking about, Leah, about, like, we're all on the path of ascension. So if we're on a path, there's some of us that are moving forward. There's some of us that are stagnant. There's some that chose to go the opposite way.
Yeah, there's a
We've all
way.
made that. We've all made that choice, and it's going to come with us to the next side, how we treated this life. But
Right.
what's interesting is that I love the question, and it haunts me in a good way to this day,
Mhm.
is when he saw Jesus and he didn't really believe in Jesus, this person. His spirit automatically got on its knees, like it knew to do that in the
Right.
beginning.
Right.
And then the second thing that happened was he said, "Who have you been in this life?"
Right.
And that was like the first question that he asked. It wasn't, what do you do, everything like that. That doesn't matter.
Right.
It's
Right.
at the end of the day, all this energy work stuff means nothing if you're
Right.
not becoming a better person. Like, it's just,
Right.
it means nothing.
Yeah, for sure. And part of that too is like, and I think that, as we're recording this today, the US has just had the election, right? The big election for that. And so there's a ton of collective energy that's flying around on this planet right now.
Yeah.
And it's
There's a
very
lot of grief.
interesting. Yeah, a lot of emotions, a lot of heightened emotions. And
Yeah.
I always find it very interesting, again, as somebody who reads energy for a living, is when people are expressing their opinions about things, what part it's coming from. So whether it's
Mm,
coming from their logical mind that's wounded and programmed, or whether it's coming from their heart center, right? From their intuition, from
mhm,
their guidance. And I feel
mhm,
like the more work that you do, with all of these modalities and all this healing work that we do, the purpose is so that we can do 90% or 95% of our experiencing through that heart center, through our higher selves, through our soul, and not through the mind. And you'll really
mhm,
notice over the next little while. I always say, like, to my students, do this as an exercise when you're talking to somebody. Are they communicating to you from their mind, or are they communicating
mm.
to you from their soul? There's a massive vibrational difference.
Yeah, definitely. I would agree with that completely. And I think at the end of the day too, like, no matter what, like, if I look at my own growth and my own healing that I've done on myself or my wife, we never checked to see who the president was when we were doing work on each other. Like we just
Right.
never did. So
Right.
so that to the listener who's listening in, and maybe you're devastated, or maybe you're rejoicing, or whatever you're doing, at the
Right.
end of the day, none of those men in that White House will ever care about your ascension or your self-love or the person you're becoming more than
Right.
the person in the mirror. Like,
Right.
as long as you're aware of that, I think you're in a good place.
Right. Know where to put your power. Know where, right, to put
Beautiful.
your
Yeah.
power. So, Emanuel, if people want to work with you and learn from you, how are you offering things right now? Are you doing groups? Are you doing online? Tell us how they can connect with you.
So I'm doing a little mix of both. I would highly recommend, my favorite thing to kind of get their feet wet would be, I'd be open to do an introduction session with them, like kind
And
of like,
that's what I did with you, I think.
yeah,
That's,
so yeah.
yeah.
And then basically they can find me on my platform. I think that's the best place to find me. So that's it's heal, but it stands for haveempathyandlove.com. So my wife and I made that platform. We wanted people to be able to talk about anything. There's free speech in there about holistic stuff. So if you want to talk about the V word and V word injuries, or whatever you want to talk
Right.
about,
It's all open.
no, yeah, it's all open. No one's going to block you. And so we made that platform. Plus, that's where I'm doing my group healing every single week. This week, we're working on the father wound, so people who have the father wound. So I'm doing 7 days of healing for the
That's
father
great.
wound. And then next week, it's going to be a different subject. So everyone gets notified there. But if they want to go to haveempathyandlove.com, and they can message me personally and say, hey, I heard you on this podcast, then
And we'll have your
I'd love
links
to.
in there too. We'll have
Yeah,
the
I'll make sure
links.
all
Sure.
your links are up
Yeah.
there and everything. But
Yeah.
heal.com sounds really interesting, and
And that's another great way to experience. So I've done that as well. So, back in the day when I still had the vestibular migraines that were on my, healing list. And so I actually did a couple of the solar rooms that Emmanuel and his wife do. And again, it's one of those things. It's like, you might not believe it if you're new to energy medicine and how healing works, and, to think, well, how can this guy on a computer on the other side of the world, how can he actually bring healing to me? But it works
yeah.
because, Emmanuel gets the testimonials from the people are coming back. I know firsthand myself that and remember, I am like somebody who doesn't just go in blindly. All right. I am like, is this, and I know, like, I had a reduction in that time in my migraine. So what he was doing in the group collectively, worked. It's true. It works.
Well, I'll have to say that connecting to you, my journey is a little bit different than Jodi's. I haven't had the experiences with all the different people that she's had the opportunity to work with. But Emmanuel, just having your energy on the call and the things that you're talking about are so connected to, I know so many of the people that are listening, that I think you'll be hearing from quite a few of us after we get this out for people to be hearing. So
Yeah.
thank you so
That's
much.
awesome.
And
Yeah,
we
thank you guys
definitely
for having
need
me
to
on
have
here.
you back because I'd like to have you do some work because I know that you can do this, right? Like we can
Yeah.
do, yeah, I would love to see people, have them be able to see you do and how it comes out. And yeah, I definitely we want to play with you a little bit more.
Cool. Yeah, I'm down to be played with, and yeah, it's kind of like I said, I just love talking about this because it's like my center focus, and
Right.
I just want to help people, and I
Right.
really feel like my mother said something really cool that I think you guys might appreciate. He said that she says, Emmanuel, I want to let you know that I'm very different from doctors. And this was kind of when I was a teenager. And I was like, how are you different, Mom? She's like, I treat people like they're living, not like they're dying,
That's beautiful.
And
Oh,
and and
that's
so
beautiful.
and so that's how I want to follow my mom's legacy, is that I treat people like they have so much life to live, and that there's so much hope, and that we just get rid of the darkness and let's bring in the light.
That's
It's a
beautiful.
beautiful way to
Yeah,
end this podcast, I
that's
think. I love
awesome.
that.
Okay, so thank you guys for tuning in and listening to this wonderful conversation. I feel like again, we could go through like there's so much. Like we could just, put our pajamas on and sit here and talk all night with Emmanuel. So
Pajamas.
so we'll have to have
Have
you
them
back
back in the
for
new
sure.
year for sure. Yeah,
Yeah,
because we didn't even get into like the AO scanning. I have so many other questions. So yeah,
right.
for sure. We'll have him
you guys know I love the whole AO scanning stuff. So maybe we'll bring you and your wife Jess in for that. We'll have both you guys in for that. It'd be pretty cool.
She would love that for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so we will make sure that Emmanuel's links are in there so you guys can reach out and connect with him. And Emmanuel, it's been a pleasure as always.
Yep, it's been awesome. Thank you guys. Appreciate you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of Collective Soulversations. We hope you enjoyed the conversation and found it as enlightening and inspiring as we did. To keep up with our latest episodes, be sure to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform. And if you liked what you heard today, please give us a like and leave a review. Your support helps us reach more listeners and continue bringing you meaningful discussions. If you have discussion ideas or guests you would like to hear us have a Soulversation with, reach out at any time to our personal socials. You can find Jodi Jones on Facebook and Instagram, and me, Leah Exodia, at Cosmic Heart Intuitive Services in those same spaces. Looking forward to our next Soulversation next week, sending you so much gratitude and love.